Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and welcome to another live, free, exclusive over at The Rock Fan. And for today's show, I thought it would be interesting to have my boy, Steve Poikonen, from the Slow News Day show on. Man, it stinks that they have that bottom part in the meeting, even with the full screen. I'm going to have to get a little better of a whatchamacallit there. Yeah. See what I'm saying there? I mean, I guess I could clip that off. That's my fault. That's amateur hour on my end, Steve.
They can't all be zingers, my friend. They can't all be zingers.
Yeah. So I thought I'd have him on, talk about everything that's happened in the last several weeks. We now have Trump opening an office of the former president. I don't know if that's like a first-timer. I think it's a first-timer on the name because, you had the Clinton Foundation after those, and, Jimmy Carter has his own thing, and so does Reagan. Even after he passed, his wife did that. It's not unheard of. But with everything going on, with the executive orders being passed, with people paying more for insulin and epinephrine out of the gates, hope you're happy. Hope you're okay with that, because I don't know. If I needed insulin or epinephrine, I'd be pretty pissed about it. Just me. Is Slow News Day Steve. And guys, you can check him out not only at Slow News Day Show on Twitter, but you can check him out over at Action for Assange, the group that he often works with, and that's how we get to hook up sometimes over in D.C. So, Steve, why don't you tell my audience what you've been up to and why it's so important that these people get involved?
So we've been gearing up for a really big public pressure campaign over at Action for Assange. We got several fronts that we're operating on right now, a couple of different ancillary projects. Basically what happened is when we went out to DC at the beginning of January, the judge in his extradition hearing denied extradition on the grounds that Julian Assange was likely to commit suicide if he was extradited, and U.S. prison conditions are just god-awful. But she agreed with all of the legal aspects of the prosecution, which is incredibly troubling. And then 48 hours later, she denied him bail after releasing after ordering his release. So now he's in a just limbo. He's in the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom. It's freezing cold over there. They still haven't given him his warm clothes. They're putting all of the people who test positive for COVID on his wing. And he's not been charged with anything. He's awaiting a decision to see whether or not the UK court will hear the United States appeal, just languishing as a political prisoner. So, there's going to be significant pressure put on Joe Biden. To what extent that will help, I'm not sure. But what it will do, I hope, is help generate a larger public presence in the street demanding Julian Assange's immediate release.
Yeah. And I want to ride on a super unicorn that shits gold all the way to the Freedom Tower, my friend. But I don't think all the pressure in the world on Zombie Joe and friends is going to do a damn thing.
So here's the thing about that, though, because it's less about the pressure that you put on the politicians, and it's more about the energy that you generate among the population. Mm-hmm. And if we can generate a very vocal, mobilized, angry population, that's when you start to see some concessions being made by the people in power. And I feel like there are so many overlapping issues, Jason, that we can round up, I don't know, liberty-minded individuals and unite on that. It's either there's more of us than there are of them, and we go and take what we want, or it's there's more of us than there are of them, and we leave them to their cities and their transhumanism, and we go develop communities somewhere out in the middle of the fucking nowhere. I don't know.
Well, did you see the news story of, I think it was in I don't want to say it was I think it was within 16 years they were talking about cities outside the asteroid belt. Like
Oh,
literal
that's right. I
Elysium.
gotta go live on an asteroid belt. Sure.
Literal Elysium style cities on an asteroid belt. Like they literally are trying to sell that to the public. Whether that's a reality or just one of these pie in the sky dreams, like we're going to the moon and Mars. And you notice Bezos is in the news now more and more with his space program. You know, Space Force, I hate to tell everybody, but Space Force wasn't Trump's idea. That was something that was already in place, and they wanted to now use it as a new type of military promotional propaganda to now begin to militarize space further and be more outward about it. That's all that was. Okay? And
I was going to say, I mean, we've had U.S. Space Command since 1983, 1984.
yeah.
Something like that. And this is now a branch of the military, but also the part of the Air Force because they originally came out of the Air Force. And it's one more way to funnel a giant puddle of cash into what Ray McGovern calls the Mickey Mat, the military industrial MIC Congressional Intelligence Media Academia think tank complex, which is a incredibly inclusive acronym, I think.
Oh, so again, Steve, you know, I know I went on your show and we talked a little bit about the possibility before Trump left of a pardon for Assange or anybody of importance. Of course, that did not happen. Instead, former Israeli spies get pardoned. That's okay. People that actually commit espionage against the United States are caught and evidence is shown in a court of law and everybody goes, of course. Those are the type of people he pardons. Okay.
Yeah.
No pardon for Assange. I'm sure that you got hit with a lot of hopium on the back end and saw a lot of it on Twitter and this and that.
It was so painful.
The most ridiculous scenarios ever. Now you have Trump, I mean, I guess going further than just conceding and giving a farewell speech. He has officially called his office that he has opened up that of the former president. Thoughts on a couple things here. Will that in any way be used to quell the delusion out there that somehow he's still in military power and everything's on a Hollywood set and the wackiest things in the world are going on?
No. So that will do none of that. It will only encourage more of that.
So you're going to tell me that this guy's playing 47,000D chess and there's some kind of cipher code in this letter here?
The whole like Q ecosystem that developed over the last several years has I guess branched off into different new like avenues of grift, and this is gonna be one of them. Look, man, Donald Trump was playing a part from the time he took the oath of office through now. It's the three single largest upward transfers of wealth in recorded human history, the continuation of the drone program, the continuation of Obama and Bush's forever wars, a whole bunch of new coups that Joe Biden's administration is still following up on and is proud to continue the fine American tradition of destabilizing Latin America. Like it's the idea that Donald Trump was ever going to be some sort of savior was always and will forever be marketing. And as soon as you get that through your heads and go listen to what George Carlin and Bill Hicks had to say about marketing, the sooner we can all stop having to play make-believe.
Well, we do live in a public relations world and a propaganda-induced culture. We continue to see that day after day after day after day with these actions from Biden's office. You're not hearing a lot from Biden. You know, you're getting these like literal 2 and 3 minute sound bites that he still doesn't look or sound good on. I don't know if you saw yesterday's, but he stuttered and stammered again when he was talking about, you know, domestic terror. He can't really speak that well. what are your thoughts now that, again, the push has been to look at people that were at the Capitol, or now they've put it in writing, libertarians, evangelical Christians, pro-lifers. Basically, these are traditional values in our Judeo-Christian society, in our constitutional republic, and turning those into organizations that are domestic terrorists.
Well, I mean, I'm surprised it took this long, to be perfectly honest with you. I had Jared back on the show on Sunday, and we had a like a 2-hour conversation about the Tavistock conspiracy. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, Jason.
Oh, I know about the Tavistock Institute. I know about the whole "you sold your soul for rock and roll" fucking bit of who they may have, and then that gets into what, the San Fernando Valley.
Laurel Canyon.
Laurel Canyon too. On top of that.
Yeah. But at the root of that conspiracy is the notion that that the counterculture itself and everything that stemmed from it through now was designed to demonize and erode and conquer those traditional American values. So I'm not going to say 100%, one way or the other if this is what we're watching play out. But it is kind of an interesting parallel to draw, because when you demonize, what is essentially like being a community member and being, having a stable family, it leaves the door open for people like Kamala Harris to sound like they know what they're talking about. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That is a dead-eyed, soulless servant to power who does not like you.
Well, Jared, I'll say this. Jared Beck's a little down the rabbit hole. Some of his past work has been great. I had a good conversation via JFK that you facilitated. I'll say this, man. Anything's possible. I think that the reality of the situation in many cases is actually much darker than Jason Burmis could ever portray it, or Steve Poikonen could ever portray it, because we're not on the inside of these events that produce horrific results. And unfortunately, this world of PR and propaganda and the victors claim history is not new. It's just become much more sophisticated, right? And it's now just much more in your face. But at the same time, the hope is that so many people have now seen at least beyond that first veil, right? How do we get them to go from opioid addicts to citizen activist, Steve? Because there has to be a line where eventually some of them break. They come into my comment section, the ones that stick around. Hey, we've lost 400 plus subscribers in the last 5 days. And people are asking me why I'm harping on it. It's because there's a huge crowd that's still into this. You should see my backlog DMs. They're not just bot accounts. Okay? They're not. I check some of them. I'll go and I'll see how long has this person been on Twitter or whatever. These aren't bot accounts. You know what I'm saying? These are people that are still hooked into a narrative that now should be totally and completely disproven, but they also know that the narrative they're being told on television is a lie as well. So how do we get them to now use that discernment, get away from that break, and then get them from the keyboard cowboy to the people that can take action and possibly make a difference in cases like Assange?
You constantly keep the dialogue going, Jay. You constantly have these conversations, and if possible, you have those conversations with the people who are, hanging on to that little bit of hopium. In the last couple of years, I can't tell you how many people unfollowed my Twitter account or blocked me on Twitter just because I was saying mean things. I was saying correct and accurate things about like AOC and the Squad and the limited hangout that is the progressive movement in general. And I've been getting a pretty steady stream comments or messages or comments left on the YouTube channel where they're like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. I the little bit of history in my rear view mirror. Shit, you were right. And can we start over? And how can I help?" And I'm getting a steady stream of that. So by never giving up on people, really, ultimately is what it is. Like, it requires a little bit of faith on our part, to still hold out some hope for humanity. But if we keep doing that, we keep having these conversations, we have them in real life, and then we bring on other activists and organizers. And we say, hey, where are you? Where are you doing your thing? How can people get involved? Because it doesn't have to be what we're doing. I think there's a number of convergent causes that people can take up that dovetail, again, with trying to get some self-determination, trying to get some, hold on to some civil liberties, trying to hold on to some human rights.
And that's important right now, folks. I just want to say that, the key two words that Steve ended with, civil liberties, are really, at the end of the day, what all this is about. Do you have the right to believe that life begins at conception? Do you have that right? Do you have the right to believe that the Constitution and Bill of Rights are the ultimate word and you're going to call yourself a libertarian? Do you have those rights or not in a country that's used the flag and continues to use those sacred halls? They're sacred, Steve.
They're sacredest.
Yes, the sacredest of halls, the sacredest of places, to literally pass legislation that inverts those realities of civil liberties. And on behalf of a predator class, the vast majority, 90+% of the people in there are open minions and serve those members of the predator class. I don't know if you saw it, but I'd love to get your take on Rand Paul versus George Stephanopoulos earlier this week via the election and voter fraud issues of the last election, and how, not only Stephanopoulos towed the line of the complete media narrative, but as he did it, he jumbled his words a couple times, right? It's supposed to be widespread voter fraud, and then he made it widespread evidence of fraud a couple times. I felt like that was a very big tell, because usually he's on point to sticking to the script, and I think that showed that he was kind of getting shook because, Paul, time and time again, they say he didn't produce any evidence, brought up the point again. The vast majority of these cases never looked at any evidence. It was all about standing. It was a procedural way not to look at the evidence purposely. And then he did name off the double voters, the people that voted from no address, all these things. And they just act like, no, it's not real.
So I watched the whole thing yesterday because I had caught your show on it, and Rand Paul's one of those guys where, like, under normal circumstances, we would probably end up rolling in the gravel like pretty quick, but he's got his moments where he's just brilliant. And Stephanopoulos was so rattled that he flat out tried to define reality without ever producing any substance. It was dismissed. The court didn't. And every time Rand Paul was like, hey, look, standing is, why it was dismissed. Nobody ever looked at the evidence. I'm here so they can look at the evidence. I'm here for that. Can they do that? Can we get to a point? Because the American people have lost confidence in their electoral system, and that is dangerous. And Stephanopoulos is like, but Joe Biden and Bill Clinton and I don't, like, he was tripping all over himself. And he was flat out calling Rand Paul a liar, and everyone who wanted to have a genuine look at our elections, which is our right, by the way. If they're publicly funded elections, if they're really publicly funded, we should be able to ask for an audit whenever we want. We should be able to view the source code. The software for voting machines should not be proprietary, and the open source software should not be secured by Microsoft and DARPA. It's a little sketchy to me. A little bit sketchy. Now, can I say with any certainty whether we had the freest and fairest election in the history of ever, always? Hell no. And neither can George Stephanopoulos. And that's the point.
But do you notice the whole interview, Lord knows what he was actually supposed to be scheduled to be on for, because Stephanopoulos says, look, I want to set a marker. Like, he's literally like, I'm going to set the marker of truth right out of the gates. That I'm going to make this man say that the election wasn't stolen. Right? I mean, literally, he wants to set the marker. He's George motherfucking Stephanopoulos. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, another man does that to me, and ambushes me like that, and we have that conversation, and we're actually in the same room. I'm going to say, look, man, I already intellectually made you look like my bitch. Don't make me put your hand in my pocket and walk you around this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a threat to physically use force. But you know jail slang, Steve. I'm just saying. Like, I'm sorry. You don't dictate reality, George Stephanopoulos. Just because you've hung out with the Clintons and you were the right-hand minions of them, and you've hung out with guys like Epstein and no one gets to talk about it, and you've kept your job, doesn't mean that you're somehow fucking the arbiter of all truth. And George Stephanopoulos, he looked at all the evidence. Don't you worry. The way it was framed, that the president and the lies he told all these people, and this insurrection narrative is just so over the fucking top that you end up playing into it and feeling bad for Trump because it's just such a smear job, man.
How many times, Jason, over the last 4 years did you or I or some of the other people that we frequently travel with say, okay, look, I can't believe that you guys are making me defend Donald Trump right now, but holy crap, I kind of have to, what that interview was, at least like in micro, was the neoliberal establishment defining reality going forward for the next 4 years, where what they say has so much more to do with what the truth is than what the actual truth is. This is 1984. And I hate making an Orwell comparison because everybody's been doing that for years and years and years and years. But it was the party's final command was reject what you see and reject what you hear and only do what the party tells you. And this is what we've got. I can't. There's a huge dust up going on right now because my friends and your friend Pasta and Fee had on the Magnus dude from the Boogaloo Boys.
I watched that interview and I texted Pasta right away afterwards and said, "Great job." Because you know what we need? More of that. If you haven't seen that interview, it is fucking fantastic. And let me tell you why. Because you need interviews with these individuals, whether you agree with them or not, or the organizations or the way they've been portrayed in the media, and you need to give them an opportunity to talk. Can you imagine, and I'm not trying to say that this guy is who I'm about to compare that to, but can you imagine if you never gave Malcolm X a voice or Martin Luther King Jr. a voice, and you only let establishment media tell you what he and that movement were all about? That's all I'm saying. And I watched that interview start to finish yesterday, man, and it was spot on. I hate to interrupt, but continue.
No, and so in their comment section, in their comment section. Like, the interview was going on, and as you said, I mean, it was great. It was a fantastic interview. There was pushback. There was just a conversation, adults who see the world differently talking about how they see the world. And this is somehow supposed to be the most evil thing that's ever happened in the history of always. And it's fucking dumb. And in the comment section, you had people who were listening to this, hearing what Magnus had to say, hearing what Pasta had to say, hearing what Fee had to say, and they were repeating the smears from their favorite Rose Twitter personality or their favorite Young Turks affiliated fucking neoliberal in training wheels. And that was it. Like, they weren't listening. It was just, they were taking a break in their own talking so that they could come up with another rebuttal. Like, that's all they were doing. They were listening to clap back, not to engage.
Not only that, but they even went full board conspiracy theory too. And I'm glad that at least Pasta's dealing with this now too, because I've been dealing with this for like fucking 14, 15 years, right? Like, deep fakery, all this nonsense. That's not even the Boogaloo Boy in the video. Prove that's the Boogaloo Boy in the video. So the guy had to go over and get his own jacket and the whole thing. And, you know, obviously it was him. If you paid attention to even the short segment that they played, which was like 90 seconds, if that, you could tell that's him. Same voice. You know what I mean? And he was saying that the clip that Jimmy Dore had played, and I can't confirm or deny this, I haven't watched Jimmy Dore's take on it, but whatever clip they played, they deepened his voice and they made him sound scarier. They pitched him
down a little bit. Yeah, because he's openly gay and sounds like an openly gay man. You know,
can you even say that like anymore? Like, you can't even. I mean, I don't even know if that's just.
That's not me saying that. That's him saying that.
That's what I'm saying. But I mean, in this weird world of you know, you said transhumanism. You know, last night I covered the story that the Hanson Robotics, which is something I've been covering forever. You know, they say that they founded in 2013. Man, I really think that they were in Austin way before that. Maybe that's when they went public. But they moved to Hong Kong because I remember they had a child robot that creeped me the fuck out. You know what? Let's do it live.
Okay.
Let's do it live, because the child robot was one of the creepiest things I had seen. And let's see if we can get this right here. Hanson Robotics child robot. Let's see. See, I don't want the little Sophia. I want something that's way older than that.
Oh, that was a crazy question, though, because it said, like, is little Sophia still alive? It's a fucking robot.
Yeah. I think this is it. Let me see. Let's see.
Oh, that
jumping around like crazy.
Between a Cabbage Patch Kid and RoboCop?
Continue to cite. Yeah, this is it. See, all right, so now I remember, you know, they say they weren't there until 2013, but here you are in 2011. And they were this is from 2011. And this is just one of the kid robots they were working on at the time. And I remember them being in Austin because I was still working at InfoWars when I first came across this stuff. There was their Einstein bot. I think they also had Philip K. Dick they had made. Almost 100%. So anyway, they become a big company. Shocking. Apparently, they also got funding by Epstein and others. And due to the pandemic, man, they're rolling them out. They're rolling out not only Sophia bots, but like 4 different lines of robots that are going to have humanoid characteristics. And essentially what you're going to have is you're going to have these glorified human-like Amazon or Google Echo devices, like their smart speaker, basically. You know what I'm saying? They'll be able to perform small tasks, but they're already talking about certain ones in that article working at elderly homes and in hospitals, and that they'll be able to give the social care they need to the basically like hospice workers. So now, you know, you already sold your parents out and put them in a fucking home. And the worst of the worst could possibly be happening to them. But now the staff is going to be 75% robot. So they'll have absolutely zero human empathy if they had any in the first place. And you're literally going to be relegating your family to be at the behest of a predator class billionaire's vision of AI. I think that's the best way I can put it. Like, that's what it is. I mean, they will decide what the protocols are for you. And as much as you kick and scream and cry, if they think it's time to give you a shot, you're getting that shot. If they think you're staying in that room, you're staying in that room. If they think one bedpan's enough, one bedpan's enough, Steve.
So, can we arm the elderly with squirt guns? Like, you know, I mean, I'm just trying to think of a workaround for this. I really am. Like, I've never been one of those people who are like, oh my God, I can't wait to merge my mind with the computer. So I don't understand that line of thinking. But when I see what's coming out of Davos this week, when I know what the World Economic Forum has been trying to shove down everyone's throats, and when I combine that with Joe Biden and Camilleri are, you know, running the show right now, it makes me want to go live in the woods further than I currently do, like forever. Like, I'm not even kidding, man. Like we're seriously, you know, we're looking around for a few places where we can grab up some inexpensive-ish land and like build out a community. This is fucking ridiculous.
Let me tell you something. Militich is dead set on that, man. He keeps talking to me about it. He wants to do the same thing. I'll be honest, man. I like where I live right now, but if I'm able to in the next, let's say, 18 months, depending on where crypto goes and how much maybe Rockfin expands or what happens on deplatforming and all this stuff, and just the world in general, it's tough, you know. Like, the kids got their first basketball games tonight. I'm pretty excited about going to that. I'm not excited about having to wear a mask. I think that's ridiculous, but whatever. I've been able to navigate here. I'm looking at land maybe 20, 30 miles out. Maybe not even that lot. Like 15, 20 miles out is actually pretty cheap. You know what I'm saying? And maybe something with a small farmhouse already on it, you know, that I can just buy outright. You know what I mean? And again, become that self-sufficient person that so many of us may need to be. At the same time, I also realize that, you know, I've got to still figure a way out to, you know, support my family. And if we go out there, the school system may not be as good. And, you know, I may not want to do that just for that reason. And plus, this is a pretty happening area. I actually like it here. You know what I mean?
Well,
like today.
The cities are legit, man. They are. I haven't been back to the Midwest for a while, you know, but when I was late teens, early 20s and doing a ton of traveling around, always had a great time in the Quad Cities. Always.
And people are nice here, man. Like today I'm out there. We got some snow last night, Steve. We got about 8 inches, maybe a little bit more. And I was out there shoveling today, and the guy next door who runs the property sees me, and he's like, hey, you want to use my snowblower? I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. And that feels good, man. It's like, hey, you know, the guy doesn't even know my name.
With your snowblower.
Yes, I want to use your snowblower, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I mean, I'm digging it here. I think that's part of the protest, right? Is you got to find your own private little Idaho, as they say. Like, you've got to find your own personal heaven, and you've got to navigate this, and you've got to find a way to find others to fight back with. I think that's the bottom line here. I think you got to drop the hopium. No one's going to do it for you, right, Steve? The best laid plans may get wrecked, but if you have no plans at all, you might as well get ready to bend it over and take it into Keister and love your UBI and love what's happening in New York City. Did you see that Stomp Fest in New York City?
Yeah, I did.
Crazy, right? 11:30 a.m. And, you know, it's not like I haven't been preaching about this even before I left. Like, when you've got a woman in the middle of the day, in the middle of the city, not in a bad area, with her 2 and her 4-year-old, and some guy tries to take the 2-year-old away, and it's 4 citizens, not the police, that stop it, and then it's 1 citizen out of the 4 that has to hold that person down Brazilian jiu-jitsu style for the police not to come, and instead you're sending mental health officials. Look, I get it. The guy probably was mentally ill. Here's the thing. The mental health officials come after the police officers stop it in the first place, in the first 90 seconds. Like, anything more than that is unacceptable in a city that size. I'm sorry. Like, if you've never lived there, if you've never been there, this is like nightmare 1980s fucking free-for-all New York City shit. Unless you lived through it, you can't even imagine what that looked like. You know, and we were kids when that was happening, Steve. But I don't know if you were ever in New York at those times. DC reminded me very similarly, too, by the way. That's fallen apart. People don't realize that in quick fashion. I showed you that, right? That the day after everybody left, that the car on right next to mine at the hotel at the border of DC and Maryland got boosted on on milk crates, guys. Yep. Again, hadn't seen that since I was a kid in the 80s.
Yep. So I'd been out to New York. I think it was like 86 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably wrong about that year, but maybe 88. You're right. Bo Jackson was playing for the Kansas City Royals, and there was a Yankees game that we got to. And I remember like my uncle telling my dad, yeah, you don't need to go park your car at Fort Apache unless you want it on blocks when you come back. You know, it was like, why don't you guys, you know, take the train in and like, you'll be all right. But yeah, I mean, dude, that was a rough area, and then it got gentrified, and now it's fucking going to shit again because nobody can afford to live there. When you make a place impossible to survive in, people are going to do some wild shit to survive. People are like 3 days away, 3 days out of food before they go to like their most base nature.
And not only that, Steve, but they're also in a geographic location that is extremely condensed for the level of the populace. Like, again, people can't really appreciate what 10 million people off the tier and into an island really looks like until you're there. And then they really can't appreciate it till they've been to the island part and see how normal that is for the most part. Maybe like an urban area, you know, suburbs that you've been to, but still country and live in. I mean, that small part of the 5 boroughs, dude, is pretty gnarly compared to everywhere else I've been to the country. There's nowhere like it, period. Nowhere.
No. And when I lived in New York, I was in a decent neighborhood. I was on 2nd and Hicks in Brooklyn in the Heights. It was, you know, this was 99. You know, it was already like mostly Giuliani, so it was no fun, you know, but I could still go grab a fucking dime bag from the bodega if I wanted to. Sure. Like, it was cool. But yeah, dude, it's getting wild, dude. I'm in California. Mm-hmm. This is the 5th largest economy in the world, mm-hmm. and also a 3rd world country. Like, it's crazy. I'm bracing for some weather that can. Everyone thinks we're going to be isolated and cut off without power, without internet, without phone. And for me, that means without water, because my water is electrically pumped up to my house for weeks. Just shut off. And this is because of nature. Because when we had to evacuate for the wildfires back in August, all of the part of the county that burned is now primed for mudslide. We're supposed to get 1.5 feet of rain in like 8 hours. That's a lot. That's a lot. 1.5 feet of rain, 18 inches of rain. Which means that if the mountain slides out, it takes the houses with it. Yeah. So
have they evacuated any areas yet?
Yeah, they have. They have. Everybody that's in what they're referring to as the debris flow got all more or less forcibly evacuated. Like, the sheriffs were going around making sure that you got out.
And by the way, guys, I'm not against that. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to fall on your sword, you want to fall on your sword. But when you're talking about that, I don't think you've obviously never seen a mudslide take out a house. It literally happens in seconds. Like a house that's been there for decades, all of a sudden this happens, the ground moves, and the thing crumbles like cardboard, and it's a wrap.
Yeah, it's more or less an avalanche, but instead of snow, you get mud, rocks, trees, and everything else that comes with it. And Jason's absolutely right. When it starts, sure, it looks like it's moving slow until it's about 300 yards away from you, coming at you with the full force of free fall gravity.
Yeah.
And then you're fucked. So, fortunately, at least from my place, I am on the other side of the what they call the scar line, where all the fire was. Yeah. I'm on the other side of that, and I'm on top of the ridge here. Which means if our mountain slides, I get to ride it down, but I'm not at the bottom of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, good luck. And if you do lose power, make sure to text me beforehand and let me know that you're going to be incognito for a little while. I'm going to be up on the convo couch in about an hour. That's going to be the next thing. I'll probably end up posting some of that on YouTube, but it looks like it's going to be a later in the afternoon / evening YouTube day for me. Thank God we have these alternative platforms. Steve, you are also on Rockfin. Why don't you tell people how they can support you there as well?
I am. Slow News Day is the name of the show. My co-host is Glory Jones. She's freaking rad. We have incredible conversations with just mind-blowing individuals. So definitely come over to Slow News Day. Here on the Rockfin, we're also on DLive, Odyssey, and YouTube for the time being. The website is slownewsdayshow.com, actionforassange.com as well. We'll have a vigil tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And Vanessa Beeley will be back on my show this Sunday, which is also at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. R.A. the Rugged Man will be on, I think, either this week or next week. He's back in Berlin, so scheduling with him late night is kind of rough. But at least he's back in Berlin and he's hanging out with his kid again. So, that's good shit.
So, guys, there you go. And remember, you can check me out over at Rockfin as well. And if you're following me here or you're a subscriber here, make sure to get Steve from Slow News Day in there as well. I'm sure a lot of you are already there. I've already seen my analytics. So, Steve, I love you, brother. Good luck with the power. And I hope it all works out for you, my friend. If not, we live in a world with an angry, angry God, sir.
Hey, man, I have chainsaws and a 300-gallon water tank and firewood, so I'm good.
Gotcha. All right, later, Steve. That is Steve Poikonen, everybody. I want to thank Mr. Gritch for the generous super chat or tip, if you will, here on Rockfin. Again, if you're watching this on some sort of a replay, make sure to Rockfin. We usually do it at 11 a.m. Eastern. I keep not doing it at 11 a.m. Eastern. But you have gotten 2 free exclusives this week so far. This one I might, again, later on in the evening post. But yesterday's I didn't. So Truth in Hollywood, Ned Beatty. Make sure to check out the exclusives over here. If you're a premium member, you get them all, including the Grand Theft World and the Capital exclusive right there. Remember, all my documentary films are free. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share if you're watching it on YouTube, or if you haven't. We've lost a lot of subscribers, and that's okay. That's okay. People are going to get mad at me. I'm sorry. I'm not perfect, and I try to do the best that I can. And if you think that's okay, $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. Big donors couldn't do it without you. We got the Go Get funding. And in the next AMA, we will read the comments. Guys, thanks again. I love you, and I'll see you on the flip.